Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford, along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of the Bucket List podcast. Today we are chatting with Emma Denley, and Emma recently came on a trek with me to the Lares Trek to Machu Picchu. Emma is I would class her as an Instagram influencer, although she might say differently. So hello Emma.
Hi Keith, thanks for having me on.
No problems at all, thanks for coming on. So I first got to know you really through Instagram, and I would say you were an Instagram influencer in terms of you have a very big audience on Instagram, and you do travel quite a lot.
I do travel quite a lot. That's true. I love to travel. I don't know. I don't think of myself as an influencer. I suppose to me, I have a relatively small following, but I think it's a real niche. Obviously, I only post travel content, so there's a nice little niche for me there. And yeah, I started probably in the end of 2020, just sharing my travels. I've always loved to travel, grew up traveling, very fortunately with my family a lot. And I just thought, why not share that with everyone else? Even if it's 100 people, I don't mind. If I could help one person go on a trip or recommend something to someone, that'd be great to me. So yeah, it really started from that. And then it's just grown. And now I'm traveling even more. I think it encourages me to travel more, which I'm not complaining about. That's how I got into it.
So in terms of your traveling then, where have you been?
Quite a few places. There's so many places I still want to go, which I know you and I chat about all the time. I've done a lot of Europe. I've seen a lot of America, South America, but there's a lot of countries in South America I still really want to visit. Central America as well. Africa is somewhere I haven't really visited at all, and that's where I really, really would like to explore more of. I think there's so much to see there. Asia, I did the classic kind of after I graduated from uni, went backpacking, Australia, Southeast Asia. So ticked off loads of sort of countries there, and I've got very, very fond memories of places like Thailand. So yeah, quite a few places.
So there's quite a few places already ticked off, but then there are still plenty of places you would say that you still want to tick off.
Yes. I love a list. So I have a big list on my phone and I tick them off as I go. And it works actually quite well because then I can, I guess, sit down and plan new destinations and how I can kind of fit them into my schedule maybe for next year and things like that. I like to, plan how I can visit a few new countries each year.
And in terms of, I think you're quite fortunate in terms of your job that you're not fixed to a Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. You can your job allows you, your full-time job, not your influencer job, allows you to work remotely in terms of that. So that must help your traveling as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very, very lucky that I can work remotely, but only now. That's a pretty new thing, obviously, I think for a lot of people since COVID, and it's something that's only been the same for me since 2020. And funnily enough, I used to get asked all the time how I traveled so much. And this was when I was working a kind of 9 till 6 job, the extra hour, 9 till 6 job in London in an office. And I only had 20 days holiday a year. And it does take a lot of planning, but you can travel really well within that. Obviously planning ahead to use bank holidays, Christmas, all these sort of things. Like, it really does take a lot of planning and looking at the flights that were ridiculous hours. I'd fly home at 1 a.m. or take an overnight flight back from America, land at 6 a.m. and go to the office for 8. Like, not things I'd recommend all the time doing, but I just love to travel. So anything I could do to sort of maximize my holiday time, I would be doing that. So it's definitely still possible to do with a full-time office job. I did it for 5 or 6 years, but now I'm very lucky that it's not so much of a stress for me and I try and work as I go.
Yeah, I think, that, like you say, the whole pandemic is changed people's working time anyway. People are much more flexible now. Like you say, people can work from home. There's this whole digital nomad thing now where, Bali, I think, are paying people to go to Bali. I read the other day to actually work in Bali digitally, and they're actually giving you grants to actually get there, I read.
Yeah, that's it. I keep seeing that actually on TikTok, all of the different countries. I think Costa Rica do one as well, where you can go there and just have a visa basically to stay. You're still, I guess, assume paying taxes in your own country, but you're just working abroad, which is great. I think particularly because it's now more difficult to do that in Europe, a lot of the further afield countries are saying, you're from the UK, come to us, which is really nice. And you see in these places as well, they have a lot more cafes with super strong Wi-Fi, a lot of community out there who are kind of just over there working maybe UK hours and then having the afternoon or the morning, whichever way around it is, to explore the new place you're living in, which is really fun. I'm definitely here for that.
So you said earlier that you've done the backpacking, the after uni kind of, student gap year kind of style. Are you still traveling like that, or is your kind of style of traveling now changed in terms of how you choose to travel now?
Thankfully, it's changed a little bit. I say thankfully because it wasn't necessarily for me. I think I had the most amazing time doing it, and obviously you're doing it as cheap as possible. We were all recently graduated students, staying in hostels, dorms of 20 people, and that is just not something I would choose to do nowadays. People coming in at all different hours, and sometimes that was us coming in at 3 a.m. I can't say it was always me in bed first, but definitely now I'm working, so I choose to spend my money on things like travel, which is fun. I don't think it's changed in the way of when I was 21, 22, all I wanted to do was kind of go explore and kind of throw myself into new situations. I think you have that when you're a bit younger. I don't think that's changed at all. I still love to do that, but I think the main thing that's changed is probably my sleeping arrangements.
But slightly more higher star accommodation now, is it?
Completely. And that's not to say that if I was in a really remote area or whatever, I'd be happy to sleep wherever, because it's all part of the experience, isn't it? But I'm definitely not a hostel gal anymore.
Yeah, I think, I always think there's two different styles of traveling in terms of, you see those people who go on their gap years, they go off exploring, they go off for 12 months, or then, the kind of, if I'm traveling on my own independently, I kind of want to go and hit somewhere for 2 weeks and spend the money and actually go and experience that one country in 2 weeks and get everything in that time. And if I want to do something, I suppose I'm in the position now where I can afford to go and do it and not have to go fruit picking for 3 weeks to do so. Completely.
But I do think it's obviously, and I know a reason of why lots of people do go to hostels is obviously the social aspect of it and being able to meet people who are like you, traveling around, wanting to meet other people as well. So everyone's kind of in that same situation. So definitely if you're looking to meet people whilst traveling, I think hostel is an amazing way to be able to do that in comparison to a hotel where you're just in your own room and maybe you'll chat to people if there's a pool or a bar or something like that. But it's definitely a lot more isolating. So I suppose it depends what you're looking to achieve whilst you're traveling, because also, I love a bit of alone time. I'm happy to just wander around a city by myself if that's how my day is looking. I'm not particularly looking to necessarily meet people that I'm going to go out with. So it very much depends. And on my kind of Instagram and TikTok, I do really want to just encourage people to get out traveling and show people that it doesn't have to be expensive. I think obviously people think that it's going to be expensive. Flights are always like well into the hundreds and thousands to fly. And actually, it doesn't have to be that way. You can be smart with it. You can be looking on Skyscanner, traveling at different times and picking locations based on flight prices. And it's way more accessible than a lot of people think.
Yeah, and I think, you do quite a lot of short trips, don't you? Just kind of long weekend style trips, European destinations and things like that.
Yeah, completely. I think that's still coming from back when I thought, when I only had 20 days holiday, I was like, right, okay, I can only take the Friday off. So where can I fly for a 2-night trip? That's probably still kind of innately in me. And obviously I most of my friends and everything like that, they are still in kind of full-time office jobs. So it's fitting in what we can when we can. But we're so lucky. We're in England. There's so many places we can travel to within 2-3 hours. I think that's amazing.
And I think the other, I mean, like I'm 3.5-4 hours from a major airport. You know, you live in the southeast where you've got plenty of airports to choose from as well. So I think, you know, in terms of, you know, you are super lucky from a Friday to a Monday kind of style trip in terms of that.
No, 100%. Being able to get to Heathrow and Gatwick definitely makes a little bit of a difference. They're both super quick for me. Although I do think they're probably two of the more expensive airports to fly from if you could get a flight from Bristol or something.
Yeah, and I mean, Stansted and Luton aren't too bad either, are they? You know, compared to, you know, you've just got to nip round the M25 and you can get quite easily to Stansted or Luton from your perspective. Yeah,
there's definitely a few perks from being kind of in the London area. Not complaining about that.
And in terms of how often do you travel with people compared to how often you travel solo?
So this is interesting. I'm trying to travel more solo now than I ever have done before, just because I think it's so good. I don't know. You get so much flexibility. You learn a lot more about yourself. It's not something that I maybe would do to all different countries. I think it very much depends on where you're going. And I'm lucky that I do have a few friends who really love to travel as well. So I might try and rope them into something I'm scheming, but and kind of rotate those few friends around. So one will come on one trip, one will come on another. So that works really well. Yeah, I'd say it's still probably about 60-70% with friends and then 30-40 by myself, but I might be meeting someone for part of a trip or different things like that. I do think it just takes a lot of planning and working out these different timings and accommodation situations and who's going to do this and also who wants to go to different places. Obviously, I'm more than happy often to go back to places, but then as I was saying, you kind of have a list of new countries you want to tick off. So kind of working through that as well and adding new ones to the list and being able to tick them off.
Yeah, and do you ever worry as a solo female traveller when you go to places?
Yes, definitely. And it's a shame that has to be the situation, but you just do. I think that's the thing as well. Like I'd always look into reviews of accommodation that I'm picking or things like that to make sure that it's going to be somewhere that I feel comfortable in not too dodgy of an area, hopefully. And then in countries, you have to be aware, but I wouldn't say anywhere I've ever felt uncomfortable or any more uncomfortable than I would do in London, I don't think, because I think you just, like with anyone, you have to be a bit kind of street smart and not walk down a dark road late at night, like little things like that people wouldn't do anyway. So it's a bit of common sense in that way. But I definitely think there's just a consideration of plans. But there's never been a time or a situation where I have felt uncomfortable. And I think people often look out for one another. So I don't know, every time I'm around, I'm always reminded that there's lots of good people out there and plenty more good people than bad people.
Yeah, that's very true, I think. And I think, you know, a lot of places you go to visit, they're, you know, especially if you are in the touristy areas, they are very welcoming to tourists, you know, especially more so now, I would say, since the pandemic. You know, since I've been traveling to countries where they heavily rely on tourism, you know, I've found that, you know, that the friendliness and the customer service that you're receiving as a traveller in these countries now is just gone through the roof because they're just so happy to have you back.
Yeah, I think so. And I often think it's the countries that maybe you'd not expect it, or they might have a bit more of a difference in culture than we would in the UK. So kind of the non-European countries that people could often assume that they might be a little bit more dangerous or a bit overwhelming, but actually those are the ones where you're the safest and the people are the friendliest. And then when you go to other European cities that there's, I don't know, they're less welcoming to tourists, or there might be more pickpockets or whatever it might be. But actually, yeah, in the far-flung countries, they're the ones that are super happy to see you. And I think you're right, especially since COVID, it's great to be able to bring tourism back to the countries and have that income for them again.
Do you, you don't think you are, but obviously you make some revenue from social media and your traveling. But when you go traveling, do you think of it as work, or does having to think, oh, I've got to get photos of this or I've got to get videos of this, does that actually come away from your traveling experience, or it's just kind of natural to you now?
To be honest, I think it's quite natural. Before I was ever posting about my travels, I was always taking pictures anyway. So I think that comes naturally. I want to take pictures of everything. To be honest, I have a really bad memory. So that's why I've always taken pictures, because I want to be able to look back and think, oh, we had dinner there that night, or we were doing this time. So that's where the picture taking has always come from. So the photos on my phone, it's just astronomical how many I have. But I try not to let it affect my trip now. I don't really tend to post in the moment. I'm quite bad at backdating things by a couple of days, which I prefer, because I think if I'm traveling, and especially if I'm with other people, I want to be living in the moment. I am always having a great time, so I don't want to be on my phone having to post in real time. I think it's one thing taking pictures or videos, and I enjoy just doing that, like the creativity behind it. But then I want to kind of have the time to sit down, process it all, go through, work out what I would actually recommend. I'm not going to post anything that I wouldn't recommend doing, or I want to post my real thoughts about something. And sometimes that's quite time consuming. So I wouldn't be doing it in the moment. So I think that definitely helps. I know people who are in similar positions to me who are trying to do it real time, and then that's a real chunk of your afternoon or evening gone doing that. And I think you're in these amazing places, like, go enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and I mean, when I'm on a trip, from a work perspective, leading groups, there's always that expectation that, we should be posting photos back to the Facebook page or the Instagram or whatever. And, I'm terrible for it, that I just forget to do it half the time, or, and I think, there was once when we did employ a full-time videographer for that exact purpose. So they came along with us and actually did that. So we didn't have to sort of worry about it, really. And
I was going to say, I think the pressure more comes from needing constant content. And I think particularly with TikTok now and how consuming the content is, and how people constantly need more and constantly need more. I know people have compared it to drugs before, like that addiction that people have with social media. I think that's probably more the pressure of feeling like, especially in this industry, feeling like you need to go on another trip and you need to do something else to get more content and be posting more and recommending more things and showing people how they can do this. But now they've done that, so what's next? I think that's the more pressure that takes a bit more time to realize that it's just social media and your life will continue without it.
And I think people also think it's, the whole thing now of, going and getting a 9 till 5 job is completely disappearing. Like, if I ask my young children what they want to be when they're older, they're like a YouTuber or a TikToker, like that. That people now think that is a career choice that's super easy to get into. And how long do you think it's taken you then from saying, actually, I'm going to have a go at this, to actually now allowing you for it to like affect your life in terms of, you are an influencer, you are getting opportunities from it?
I would say I started posting around the end of 2020, which was a great time for in lockdown and no one was traveling, but that's just backdating that content. And then kind of consistently posting throughout 2021 and now in 2022. So I suppose just over 18 months. But it's time consuming. I'm not going to lie. It is consistency. We were speaking before about consistency. I think it's not something that you can stumble easily into. And it's also putting out authentic content that people are going to benefit from. I think that's it. It's like providing value to people's lives. And it is very different based on the platform. I mean, people are talking now about Instagram and how it's kind of becoming harder and harder to create content on there. They're really pushing Reels as like their video content thing to compete with TikTok. So for the people who were very into their photography, that's a real struggle now, because Instagram aren't pushing your photos in the same way. But then on TikTok, it's quite easy to post a few videos and for them to go viral quite quickly. There's no kind of rhyme or reason behind it. So then you could say you could get followers really quickly on TikTok. but then they might not be that engaged because you've only done 2 videos and they don't actually believe in what you're saying. So yeah, it's a long process. There's lots of ups and downs. It depends really what you're looking to achieve from it. I never set out looking to achieve, I don't know, payment or anything like that, if you want to call it that. I was just looking to share tips for family and friends who were asking me always where to go on holiday or where to go for dinner in London, and then share these pictures that I enjoyed taking. If something came of it, great, but I would have been happy with 200 followers. I didn't mind.
So it was never something that you woke up one day and went, I want to be an influencer. No.
I don't think I'm too old, but I think I'm slightly older than that generation who wants to be influencers, which I'm thankful for, but I didn't grow up with TikTok or anything like that. So I think that nowadays people definitely, like you're saying, your young kids, people in their teens, they're on it constantly. That seems like a really aspirational thing to do, which I understand completely. They're living these dream lives, earning a lot of money. But I guess it's understanding the longevity behind it and how long all these things are around for.
So if anyone listening to this is thinking, oh, I could do that and get some free travel out of it, what is the 3 pieces of advice you would give someone who was thinking, I want to do that to enhance my travel?
I would say consistency in general. If it's something you really, really want to do, you just have to be consistent with it, and it's not going to grow overnight. So just keep posting. Obviously informed, useful content, but post. If you post once every month, that's just not going to work. So even if you're not traveling a couple times a year, you could travel once or twice a year and still try and do it, but just make sure you have enough content to be posting enough. And then I'd say also just really love to travel, because I think, like I was saying, the pressure to constantly be doing something and traveling can be a bit overwhelming. And I'm very fortunate because I can work from anywhere. It gives me that flexibility to be able to do it a little bit more. But I think that it's difficult to necessarily always keep up with. So make sure you really, really do love to travel and love trying things, throwing yourself into new situations. And I think exploring new places. I don't think people are necessarily looking to go to the typical places that you could book as part of a package that people would go back to every year, if that makes sense. It's finding these new destinations or cool beaches that people wouldn't know about and trying to make your kind of information a little bit unique.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. So you've always been a very independent traveller. You do a lot of the research yourself, you book everything yourself. So I'm intrigued to know why then you jumped on a group tour with people you didn't know and came away with the Bucket List Company and did the Lares Trek with us to Machu Picchu.
Yeah, super different for me, but I loved it. So Peru's been on my bucket list for so long. Like I was saying about how I write this list every year, Peru was on my list for this year. So I knew it was a place I wanted to go and visit. I've seen amazing kind of destinations, and Machu Picchu obviously is show-stopping. Kind of everyone needs to go see it in their lifetime if they can. But I do think there are certain countries where you just need that little bit of extra help in organizing kind of your schedule, knowing people on the ground in the country to work it out for you, how you're getting from A to B, or the logistics behind it. I suppose there's just certain things that are really, really tricky to do from the UK, from your computer, and book in advance. So when you do a group trip like yours with to Peru, it just takes, I suppose, that kind of stress out of it when you're going to a foreign country that you've never been to before. And I think particularly as well, previously when I've been looking at Peru, I kind of saw the idea of going to Machu Picchu. You just flew into Cusco, you got the bus, you got the train, and just arrived at Machu Picchu like the majority of people do. But I really then, when I researched it a bit more, loved the idea of doing a trek. And it was a bit out of my comfort zone, like a group trip in general was. But being able to sort of have that trekking experience, going so off grid, is really, really unique, I think, and something I'd never done before. So yeah, those are some of the reasons. And
So
my phone so much. I loved being off the grid for 2 days.
I've got two questions from what you've just said there. My first question to you is we had two trips running at exactly the same time to Machu Picchu. We had the Inca Trail trip and we had the Lares trip, and you did the Lares trip. Why did you choose to do the Lares Trek over the Inca Trail trek?
I guess, like we've been speaking about, it's finding things that I think are a little bit different. And before I had done my research and kind of found this trip, I hadn't heard of the Lares Trek. I'd obviously heard of the Inca Trail. That's kind of hugely famous, but I'd never known much about the Lares Trek. And I just thought that it sounded so cool, so different to anything else. And I think in particular, I loved the idea that there just wouldn't be anyone else doing it. Obviously our group, but we just, as you know, we didn't come across a single other tourist or trekker or anyone like that the whole time we were doing it. And I just think that's so special. I don't think there's many places really that you could have that experience that we had for 48 hours, I suppose it was in the end, but trekking through the Peruvian mountains, seeing kind of those remote communities and getting to interact with them and not seeing a single other tourist. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think that's the answer I was kind of expecting from you in terms of, I think exactly the same. Everybody knows the Inca Trail. There are other ways to get to Machu Picchu, and they're just kind of not, very well promoted in terms compared to the Inca Trail. But, if you want to be, in the middle of nowhere with nobody else there but locals and culture, then people do need to do a bit of research and find out a bit more about the Inca Trail. And my second question to you on what you said earlier was, you joined a group trip, and obviously you joined it solo as a solo female traveller. You didn't know anybody else on the trip. How did you find that? Because I think this is really important for people who go, I want to go to Machu Picchu, or I want to go to Everest Base Camp, or I want to go to Kilimanjaro, but I'm on my own. I'm a female travelling on my own. Like, I'm not going to know anyone, and that will be completely out of my comfort zone. So what would you say to them, and what advice would you give them?
Honestly, I think it's the best way you could do something as a solo traveler, because these experiences, I think, are to be shared. You wouldn't just want to go to Machu Picchu solo. You definitely wouldn't be trekking solo anyway. But I think that it's an incredible way to meet people from all different aspects of life. We were from all over the UK, a mix of people who were solo as well. There were some couples, there were people who knew each other, who had done previous trips with you, I know. So it was such a mix. And I think that, I was almost overly impressed with how everyone came together and how kind of sociable everyone was, because you don't know if people are going to still want to do things by themselves. And that's completely an option. If you wanted to explore, I don't know, Lima by yourself for the day, by all means, I think you were able to, but no one really wanted to, because you're there to meet other people who also are passionate about traveling like you are, who are looking forward to the next kind of 10 days that you have together, going out for a lunch or a dinner, a drink at the bar. I think it was the perfect way to travel around the country, particularly if you are a bit nervous about traveling. Obviously, it takes the stress off when you are so carefully organizing all our plans for us, and then it just leaves you to sort of enjoy the social aspect of it. I think I was a little bit nervous about sharing a room because I'd never done anything like that with someone I didn't know before. I got very lucky with who I was sharing with. But I know there's the option you don't even have to share. But it also wasn't ever an issue. I think it was great to be able to share with someone, and you always then had a companion to go and do something with. So I loved it.
And in terms of, one thing I think about bucket list groups in general is we get a complete mixed range of people. Like, I think, you might have been the youngest on the trip, I think. And then, there was probably someone 20, 30 years older than you were. But I think in terms of the majority of our group trips, because of that age range, I don't think there's ever really any egos on the trip in terms of, everyone just mucks in and gets on with it, I feel.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most important thing to remember and come with to a trip like this. It's just being able to kind of get stuck in and kind of be involved with the group. Everyone's obviously there for the same experience and wanting to sort of have the time of their lives. Like, you're in Peru, trekking through the mountains, going to Machu Picchu, exploring all these new places. It's just an incredible experience. So I think to be able to, mingle with different people, everyone's just looking out for each other. No one's really judging. Not that they'd be judging anything in particular, but it is very much just people just want to find out about you. There might be some kind of like familiarities or similarities in different kind of people's walks of lives, but that's it. Everyone's from different areas. Everyone's from different backgrounds, has different jobs. Like you said, very different ages. And I think, that's a really nice thing. But because there was enough people as well, there were people that then you could maybe be more in common in age with, but then there was, such a wide range, which worked really, really well.
I think, like you were saying, there are so many different walks of life, so many different interests, but everyone has that one common interest of travel. And I think it's really surprising that if you listen to a lot of the conversations that were happening, they were all around travel and where people wanted to travel next or where people had been. They were just having those conversations.
Completely. I think especially if you're traveling on a trip like this, like it is an adventurous one. There's obviously some kind of activity levels involved as well. And then going to Peru, it is a further afield place. So you do get the people who, are very like-minded in what they look to spend their money on or what they look to do in their spare time. So definitely, then the kind of common interest amongst everyone for sure was travel, where people had been before. I know a few people had been on bucket list trips before, so kind of people recounting their stories of that, encouraging other people to, you should go do Kilimanjaro instead, or sort of pushing other trips that they thought would be good if you like this one. So it was great to be able to chat to different people and hear about all their different recommendations. So it was really, really fun.
And what would you say were your 3 highlights from that one trip then?
Too meant to be 3, but I think obviously I have to say Machu Picchu, which it was a little bit cloudy the day we went, but still I don't think it took away from like how beautiful it was. The kind of, it almost added to it in a way. We didn't get to see the full kind of effect necessarily. We saw the mountains at the end, but just hearing the stories about it and kind of understanding all of that history, Machu Picchu for sure has to be one of them. For me, then, can I just say our trek as a whole? That's the second one. the trek in general, but I would say what really, really made it was the team of Peruvians who were on the trek with us. Our guide Alex was just so incredible, and the team that was with him, so kind of the porters, the chef, all of that, like their service was just next level. It was incredible. I don't think any of us could quite understand how they were cooking. They were cooking in a tent, how we were having 3 4-course meals for every meal. It was just incredible. And I was blown away by kind of the food, their level of service, how nice they all were, and how hardworking they all were. So that was a real highlight for me. And what I was really, really surprised by was Lima. I loved our day in Lima. I think I've been to quite a few different capital cities, and Lima just really blew me away. I thought it was beautiful. I thought the people were really friendly. I thought it was very clean and tidy. There was a lot to see and do. A lot of kind of coastal scenery, which was just stunning. You don't often get that in a city. I loved Lima. The food we ate there was just incredible. That'd be my 4th highlight, actually, just all the food in Peru. So I'll take 4 because the Peruvian food is just another level. So that's 4.
4. And are you gonna take pisco for a 5th or not?
Oh, I did like a good pisco sours, didn't I? But I think I drank too many, so that might be why I didn't make my highlight.
And finally, then, and we'll finish on this one. We'll do another list of 3. What's the next 3 big things on your bucket list that you want to tick off?
Oh, I thought you might ask me this.
It is the Bucket Lister podcast, so that's we are talking about bucket lists.
This is very true. So I have a bucket list destination, which would be Bora Bora. I've just always wanted to go to Bora Bora. I think it looks stunning. It's so far away, but I think that's maybe why I like it. And one day, hopefully, I'll make it to Bora Bora and go swimming in that clear blue sea. I would love to swim in the wild with dolphins. They're my favorite animal, and I've kind of seen them in the wild, been on boats with them, whilst they're next to the boat, but I've never actually kind of been in the ocean with them. So if I could do that, that would definitely be on my bucket list. And then what would my third one be? I really want to go on a hot air balloon. I've never been in a hot air balloon. And I think if I could go to Turkey and go on a hot air balloon, that would be incredible.
Yeah, that's one destination that's on my bucket list. And I'm heading off to Turkey, and I'm going to try and squeeze that one in as well. But Morocco's got good hot air ballooning. That might be another one for your choice.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen them there too. And that's it. They just look incredible, the views you get. And then obviously to be there whilst all the hot air balloons are going up, and you could kind of just take a step back and look at it all. That would also be it.
I think that's what. I mean, I've done a couple of hot air balloon rides now where I've been the only hot air balloon in the sky, and actually it's a much better experience when there's lots of balloons around you. It kind of really makes that experience. In the photos that I've seen from Turkey, with the amount of balloons that are in the air at any one time, it just looks. Yeah.
That kind of terrifies me, because should they all be in the air at the same time so close together? I don't know. But I'm sure it'd make for a good picture, a good post for me.
It would make a good reel for your or
yeah, exactly. Anyway. That's not the reason I want to go, but I would take a video anyway.
Well, Emma, thank you ever so much for coming and joining us today and having a chat with us about your bucket list, what you do, your travels, etc. Where can people follow you on Instagram and TikTok? What are your...
So my account is Dens Destinations. So it's just on Dens_destinations. So check me out on there.
And that's for both TikTok and for Instagram?
Yes, that's right.
Brilliant. Well, again, thank you ever so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to speak with you today. And thank you ever so much, everyone, for listening. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bucket Lister Podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.